Welcome from the Cruising Yacht Club of Australia for this live stream of the 2021 Cabbage Tree Island Race. Gordon Bray with you, and I'll be joined out on the water this evening by the wonderful Olivia Price, Olympic silver medalist. Now this event is the third in the Audi Centre Sydney Blue Water Pointscore, which is currently led by the all-conquering Ichiban, skippered by Matt Allen, but just ahead of Whisper, David Griffith. And the other exciting news about tonight's race is that it's the first in the new series, the Income Asset Management Australian Maxi Championship, featuring the 100-footers, the Super Maxis, and also the Pocket Maxis from 60 to 80 feet. Cabbage Tree Island, it's 172 nautical miles. Once they get outside the heads, they'll head up to Port Stephens, then back again to the finish in Sydney Harbour at Watson's Bay. And I think in this fresh southerly, if there's one thing of which we can all be certain, the crews are in for an early taste of what to expect in the Rolex Sydney Hobart in 3 weeks' time. This is their last serious hit out. Good luck. Well, good evening, everyone, and I've got to say it's a rather gloomy, bleak picture here at the start line, just off Point Piper, for the 2021 Cabbage Tree Island Race. And alongside me is Olivia Price, the match racing champion. We're all very excited, although the situation is looking a little gloomy. I can tell you, you can almost touch the excitement and feel the adrenaline, because we have a record fleet, Olivia, of 65 boats in this year's race.
It is so exciting to be back out here on the water. For 65 boats to be entered in the Cabbage Tree Island Race is incredible. So I'm really looking forward to the start. As you can see, it is pretty gloomy out here, but that also means that there's a bit of wind around. So we're going to see some spinnakers, maybe even some A1s up this evening, and a fast run out of Sydney Harbour.
Yeah, tell us about the conditions then. Obviously the southerly came in early afternoon, and what can we expect? Is it going to increase heading up north to Cabbage Tree?
Well, this is the first southerly of two we expect over the race period. So some of the TP52s are looking at coming in later tomorrow evening, so about a 24-hour race. So there is another expected southerly to hit, but they don't know when it's going to hit, so it's quite a transitional zone throughout the night and into the morning. But this first few hours of the race is sure to be a lot of fun.
Well, we're just over 11 minutes before the start of this year's race, and we might just recap on the situation with the Audi Centre Sydney Blue Water Pointscore, because that's been intriguing. We've had the Flinders Island Race and also the Bird Island Race, 2 races far. This is the third, and of course the Rolex Sydney Hobart will complete the Blue Water. It's a prestige event, but how's it looking after 2 races?
Well, after 2 races, it's really tight at the top, Gordon. I know I was watching some of these results as to what's been going on, and Ichiban is our current fully crewed overall leader, followed by Whisper just 2 points behind. And then we've got Gualo in on 6 points, Matador on 9 points, and then Zen rounding out the top 5 with 10 points. So it's really tight, and we're expecting even tighter tussles this evening.
And of course we've got 20 entries for the Rolex Sydney Hobart in the two-handed division, competing for the first time. The two-handed racing has just taken the world by storm. What are the standings then after 2 races?
Isn't it exciting? We've got Disco Trooper Contender Sailcloth taking out both races so far in the Audi Centre Sydney Blue Water Pointscore, and then it's equal second for Rum Rebellion and Salt Shaker. Speedwell sitting in 4th place, and then Crux in 5th. So it's exciting to know that there'll be 20 two-handers for the Rolex Sydney Hobart in just a few weeks' time.
Yeah, that's quite amazing. And Disco Trooper, a couple of ace laser sailors, Jules Hall and Jan Schulten, who I think was a Masters laser world champion. And those guys they are just lean and hungry, and they're certainly setting the pace in the Blue Water Pointscore for the two-handed division. Now here's one of the Super Maxis, Law Connect, a new game, a new name, formerly InfoTrack, and they're ready to go.
Oh, don't they look excited? I know that we have 200 footers in this race. We've got Law Connect, and then we've got Scallywag. So it's really going to be an interesting race. They're both similar styled boats with bigger hull over the water. So even though they're 100 foot, they're both quite similar. So expect a bit of tussling. And I just want to point out that neither of these two boats with their current owners have won the Rolex Sydney Hobart. So they're definitely hungry for a win.
And this is their first hit out since Law Connect's rebrand. And that's our first look at the huge new bow spread, which is going to allow them to fly a lot more sail and make them go faster, of course. That's the whole name of the game.
Exactly. And this is, you know, the first race of the new Maxi series that's happening over the weekend. And so the first race of the Income Asset Management Australian Maxi Championship. So it's first of many races for them to battle it out.
So we'll have two Super Maxis, Scallywag and also Law Connect, competing in this Cabbage Tree Island Race. And then we have the Pocket Maxis. And of course we have all of those very fast TP52s. I think there are 8 boats in the 60 to 80 foot range, including the 2018 Rolex Sydney Hobart winner, alive from the Derwent Sailing Squadron in Tasmania.
It's great to see them back up here racing in Sydney, being part of the Audi Centre Sydney Blue Water Pointscore. Now, along with Alive, there's also their sister ship in Wild Oats 10, who've come out to race the Cabbage Tree Island Race this evening. So the battles are just going to continue between all of these mini maxis and super maxis throughout the evening, and then it's going to go, as I said, into that transitional phase, and who kind of picks through the holes and gets to this new southerly shift later tomorrow morning.
Well, we've got a bit over 7 minutes before the start of this year's race. We've had the preliminary warning, and we'll get the warning gun at about 5 minutes exactly, then a preparatory at 4 minutes and a 1 minute, and then we're underway at 7 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time here on Sydney Hobart. And there's the second of the Super Maxis, Scallywag, David Witt, the ace sailor, proudly representing the Royal Hong Kong Yacht Club. And they're going to have a nice competitive dice up the harbour as they take their way outside the heads and head north to Cabbage Tree Island, which is just off Port Stephens. And they're going to have a terrific battle with Law Connect, the other Super Maxi, the 100-footer.
So just as we're coming into the start here, Gordon, you know, we mentioned that there's 65 boats out racing this evening, which is a record for this race. And we're just looking at the nautical circle in front of us. Now they're all set up with their gear up, ready to get their spinnakers up to head down the harbour in just less than 6 minutes. But nautical circle are no newcomer to the Blue Water Pointscore. They've been around for quite a number of years now.
Representing the Cruising Yacht Club of Australia, an Archambault 40, and that boat's competed in 3 Sydney Hobarts for owner Robin Shaw. Skippered tonight by Ian Prentice, and they've got a crew of 12. Prentice competes in local events with terrific results, and they'll pit their performance tonight against the likes of their arch rivals at around their size at 40 feet, Reeve and Flying Fish Arctos.
Just looking at the left of the screen there, we've got White Bay 6 Azuro. Now Shane Kearns has another slight name change to his SNS 34. For those of you that may not know the story about this boat, she's a little boat that just hasn't won a Rolex Sydney Hobart yet, but she's been so close. Now Shane actually famously bought that boat on his credit card and has done it up beautifully. So keep your eye out for when that light, depending on when that light phase comes into this race, Shane might still be able to hold into that breeze.
Yeah, well, she was built in 1981, an SNS 34. One of the last of the SNS 34s to be built. Shane Kearns representing the Cruising Yacht Club of Australia. And here again, scallywag, David Witt. David Witt, the former champion 18-foot sailor, a former world champion. This boat has been based in Brisbane. They were scheduled to be at Subic Bay, but because of the pandemic, all sorts of restrictions have been in place. But she was purchased in 2016 by Seng Huang Lee, who used to have an apartment above the Cruising Yacht Club, and he was fascinated by all the yachts, and he said, I want one of those.
Well, he's got one, and it is a great ship, the Scallywag. So as you can see, we've got the drone up in the air, and the start line's looking quite rather packed. We're inside 4 minutes to go until the start of the Cabbage Tree Island Race, and you can see Sung Hung Kai Scallywag, sitting at the bottom of your screen, so more towards the boat end of the line. Law Connect, our other 100-footer, up the opposite end of the line. So keep your eye out on which one's going to try and take advantage of this pretty dead southerly breeze we've got out here, anywhere between 10 and maybe 18 knots as you get further down the harbour. So it's going to be a ripping ride right down out there.
And you've got some very outstanding skippers, people who really like to pit themselves against their arch rivals, particularly at the start, and people who've had 18-footer experience. I mean, look at Moneypenny, Sean Langman. He's going to be gunning at the start. You've got certainly Wild Oats 10. They'll be keeping a very close eye on Alive, the near sister ships. So there are so many battles within the war, aren't there, in this race?
Definitely. And, another one to mention is the URM, owned by Anthony Johnson. It arrived in Australia in October 2019, and they really tried hard to get her ready for the 2019 Rolex Sydney Hobart, and they actually did very well. So they were 9th over the line and 19th overall. So watch out for the URM with a new and really bolstered in terms of experienced crew.
And also, we didn't mention Whisper, the 62-footer, and she is going to be absolutely gunning there for the line to try and upstage some of the larger boats and certainly keep ahead of those TP52s. But she's had a new keel, it's been moved aft, a new bulb, which has been able to lift their bow out of the water and just give them a little extra edge over those very fast TP52s off the breeze. But David Griffith, you talk of 18-foot skippers. Back in his younger day, Michael Coxon was his sheet hand on Travelodge and Gateway Hotel, which was Sid Fisher's boat in those days. But yeah, they're all arch rivals, and they're all out to get some not brownie points, but some very valuable blue chip points over their rivals.
A couple of bragging rights, I think, Gordon.
Yeah.
So we've just heard the 1 minute to go until the start. You can see Scallywag and Law Connect are nearly next to each other now, Gordon, and Willow just caught in between them. Just down the bottom left-hand side of your screen is that pin end. So that's where everyone's got to cross on the left-hand side as we're looking at it now. Big bunch up at that pin end of the line. Everyone wants to be able to not have to do any manoeuvres as they just bear away around it and head out towards the Sound.
So it looks as though Scallywag has just had to luff up a little there as we're very close to the start of the 2021 Cabbage Tree Island Race.
So we're starting to see a big bunch up down that line. So far, so good. Doesn't look like anyone's over just yet. We're approaching the final seconds. There we go. There is the start.
Here we go, and Scallywag and also Law Connect. Looks like there's an individual recall for someone.
Yes, there was an individual recall. I think it was someone in the middle of the line. So I don't believe it was one of our Super Maxis that just seemed to be launching out of there, just like Whisper. Whisper's just to windward of the Law Connect.
So Law Connect wins the start. The Super Maxi, the 100-footer. Whisper had a brilliant start. And remember, she's nearly 40 feet smaller in length and Scallywag is not far astern and gradually overtaking Whisper now.
Whisper had a glamour start there. They were actually punched forward of Law Connect, but they, as you said, Gordon, are a little bit smaller. So what they're trying to do now is stay above the line of the boats behind them so that they have as much clear air as possible to get out of the harbour. So what they're looking for is just pure speed. So you can see at the back of Law Connect, everyone is sitting right at the back. They're trying to just lift their bow up as we make our way just towards Shark Island. They've got maybe a 300 metre lead so far over Scallywag. And it looks a little bit lighter pressure as we make our way towards the eastern shore of the harbour.
So Tony Mutter, the Kiwi, is steering. He was in quarantine. He only arrived before last weekend. The ace Kiwi helmsman and the sailing master, navigator Bradshaw Kellett, also prominent in the afterguard. But Law Connect has shown everyone a clean water, and she's really powering back towards the eastern shore.
So we just saw that Whisper has quite a lead over the URM. Now, if we remember back to the Bird Island race just a few weeks ago, they had a ding-dong battle for line honours. So keep your eye on them as they, Whisper obviously has first bragging rights out of the start, but URM are charging down with the rest of the fleet. No limit, just a little bit further to leeward of Whisper's line.
So Whisper, certainly just a beam of Scallywag, the much larger Scallywag at the moment, and Whisper has captured everyone's imagination with this scintillating start here in the Cabbage Tree Island Race. David Griffith on the helm. Navigator is youngster Finn Tapper. Dougie McGain, of course, they've got a lot of big names there. Grant Simmer, the America's Cup legend. Tommy Braidwood, strong representation from Lake Macquarie in the crew.
So Law Connect just punching out above Scallywag's line here, but just down below your screen is actually Vaucluse. So there will be a jibe coming up very shortly. And I think Scallywag will want to start thinking, okay, well, how do I try and take advantage of this? There are still some more jibes to come as we make our way down the harbour.
And further to windward of Scallywag is Alive, the Tasmanian entry. There she is. Duncan Hine, who's just been named the Australian Offshore Sailor of the Year. Brilliant performance also by Alive. Philip Turner, the owner, is not on board for this race, but he will be for Hobart.
So well done, Alive there. They were able to jibe before the Scallywag and actually just sail a little bit further into the harbour. Law Connect just following them in behind, just watching them get their sails set. They've got quite a considerable lead for inside the first 5 minutes of this race. As we look back up the harbour, you can see that the fleet's starting to open up. There are jibes happening a little bit earlier than what we may have thought with the dead southerly breeze.
So this breeze looks to be around 13, 15 knots at the moment, and it's expected to increase once we get outside the heads and off the coast, punching up towards 18, 20 knots.
The start here is actually quite tactical because the breeze has to come over the land, so it's quite patchy. So we're seeing a bunch of different angles being sailed to try and keep their speed high. They may have to sail a higher angle because they're in lighter pressure compared to the boats around them. So really tactical race going on out of this start to get out of Sydney Harbour.
And here's URM, Marcus Ashley Jones from the Cruising Yacht Club of Australia, skippered by, as we mentioned, Anthony Johnson. This boat built back in 2009. A Reichel Pew 72-footer, 21.8 metres. And she's certainly been in brilliant form in the early season racing. not maybe 150 metres astern of Scallywag at the moment. So they're all having a ball out there, aren't they? Under Spinnaker, we don't have any sunshine, but we've got plenty of action.
Oh, there's plenty of action out here. We've got cross jives, we've got a bunch of TP52s. I think they're really kind of even covering each other in behind us here. The URM has clear air, and you can just see Scallywag popping out from underneath them.
And it looks as though Wild Oats 10, they're hugging the western shore.
Yeah, they opted to basically sail on the opposite jibe a little bit earlier than our 100-foot Super Maxis. They wanted to get some pressure along Bradley's Head and out of Clifton Gardens. So they're now actually pretty close lining up here between the Wild Oats 10 and URM.
So Wild Oats 10 has done a pretty nice job.
Yeah, URM's had to jibe just in front of them. So as we're zooming out here, you'll see that URM was actually forced to jibe because Wild Oats had right of way on starboard there.
Yes, Wild Oats 10 have mainly their Wild Oats 11 crew. We might just point out with Wild Oats 10 as we look at URM here that Wild Oats 11 not competing in the Sydney Hobart this year. In respect of all of the staff of the Oatley family and the business, but they are committed to start in 2022. So the Grand Old Gold 9 line honours victories will be back next year.
Oh, that's so exciting to hear, Gordon. I think everyone in Australian sailing and global sailing is really looking forward to when Wild Oats is back and having, a really great battle with a bunch of these 100-foot Super Maxis that are ready to race.
Sailing Master Michael Coxon calling the shots on Whisper. And
so you can very tight in this front to middle pack. We've got No Limit, we've got Willow with Willow on their sail, No Limit just to windward of them, and I think there's some TP52s in the mix there as well. You can see the size comparison of Willow and Volvo 70, that boat in the middle, and I believe that is a TP52. I can't figure out exactly
is it
who.
Ichiban?
They're jibing out. It's a little tricky to tell from here, but you can see that they're well and truly in this race as well.
Well, this is certainly their weather, the TP52s. But Law Connect is at the front of the fleet, and she's in a dominant position. You recall that as Infotrack, she led the Sydney Hobart fleet in 2019 out the heads, and that was almost a lifelong dream of Christian Beck. He said, I want to be first out the heads, and he did it against the other Super Maxis, the Comanches and the Wild Oats 11. And he's in great shape to do it again here.
That he is looking really comfortable as we just go past Sound Pigs, and as we get out into more open water, the Law Connect looking really comfortable here. They're coming up for a bit of pressure. You can see, there's a couple of conversations going on at the back, the afterguard. They'd be really happy with the quite a considerable lead over the Scallywag here. This is, the penultimate race before the Rolex Sydney Hobart. It's a time where they get to test out their gear, and it's also a good day for it, Gordon, because there's plenty of breeze going to be out here. They can put their systems through their paces. Everyone can make sure that they're sticking to their roles and really refine them as they go into the final race of the Blue Water Pointscore.
You can see the two dagger boards fully raised and the canting keel right out at the moment. And what about heading up the coast? Are they going to stick to the beach line?
I think they'll be wanting to get a little bit more offshore and try and capture some of the southerly breeze that's that's come in. They want to make sure that they're, out in the main part of the current as they're heading out to Cabbage Tree Island. And then they're also going to be keeping a pretty close eye on their competitor, Scallywag.
And that fresh southerly is predicted to arrive tomorrow at midday. So that's going to be if you like, an X factor for the whole fleet.
Definitely. I'm going to say I'm going to be keeping glued to the tracker and waiting for that next southerly to come through, because the transitions and the different phases that this breeze is going through in the next 24 hours is going to be really exciting and really tactical.
We were just chatting to a few of the skippers and they said it's going to be a very tricky race, very tactical, as you say. But as Olivia mentioned, you can keep up to date with the fleet by following the live tracker on the official race website, bwps.cycaracing.com. bwps.cycaracing.com. Law Connect, just going round South Head at the moment, close to South Head, probably only 70 or 80 metres off the rocks. And she's round that channel marker, and she'll be heading north very shortly. But looking at absolute picture with her new revamped colour toning and rebranding. This is the former Perpetual Loyal that took the line honours in the Rolex Sydney Hobart and the record in 2016. Then became Infotrack for Christian Beck. Christian Beck still in charge, but she's now known as Law Connect, one of the many companies owned by Christian Beck.
So it looks like Law Connects might be able to continue out of the heads without having to furl or change any sails. So that's going to be really efficient. They're going in a bit of down pressure so they can sail a higher angle, bank some height, and then once they start, you know, getting out of past North Head, they're then able to settle in and then sail their their velocity made good, the best angle to the mark.
Now, is that their code 0 at the moment? They've got 3 new head sails, and one of them only arrived today. So,
oh wow!
Yeah.
Talk about timing. There's a bit of that going around.
And talk about getting it right too.
Absolutely. You know, as you said, Christian Beck was so happy to achieve first out of the heads for the Rolex Sydney Hobart, and I'm sure we can almost spot a little grin on his face as he's making his way out in first place for the Cabbage Tree Island Race, the lead into the Rolex Sydney Hobart for 2021.
Well, they were out on the harbour yesterday and they were offshore and they were going through a lot of their manoeuvres, and it's all about perfect practice makes perfect performance, and that's been a keynote, the professionalism of this crew. Outstanding crew. They've got some of the best in the world on board, and she is probably establishing herself as the early favourite for line honours in the Rolex Sydney Hobart in 3 weeks' time. And of course we've got the Solus Big Boat Challenge on Tuesday, and that's getting underway at midday, and it'll be live streamed on this channel courtesy of the Cruising Yacht Club of Australia. That'll be a lot of fun.
It's always one of the best days on the harbour, apart from the start of the Rolex Sydney Hobart. But I like it a little bit differently because you can get so, you know, you can see these big super maxis and maxis burning around the harbour all together. You don't get that any other way. A little bit unrestricted as well. You can follow them around, which, you know, as a sailor, I love getting close.
And because it's part of this new Income Asset Management Australian Maxi Championship, all of those pocket maxis from 60 to 80 feet will also be in the Solus Big Boat Challenge. It's part of their series. It's the climax for them. So there's some great competition between those 60 to 80 footers as well.
So you can see that Law Connect is charging out of Sydney Harbour. Scallywag sitting roundabout in second place, and Whisper had a great start and have maintained close distance to Scallywag there. The rest of the fleet are charging their way out there, while those 10 is in the mix, Alive is in the mix, as is the URM. So they'll all be working their way out here, wanting to just get out into some open breeze, I think. There's a bit of transition that's happened in the past 15 minutes to get out of Sydney Harbour.
Yeah, you mentioned Whisper. They're certainly performing outstandingly at the moment. And that was, I think that may have been Whisper, and is that Scallywag?
Yeah, so Scallywag sitting in behind Law Connect there. But actually, as you mentioned, Gordon, I think that was Whisper in second.
Yeah, I think it was.
Fantastic effort from Whisper, being, as you said, 40 foot shorter than a 100 foot Super Maxi.
Yeah, well, again, they've got a lot of new sails, and they've been able to utilise those, these head sails in these conditions, and their guru man, David Griffith calls him the speed loop man.
Oh.
Robert Greenhow, the Englishman.
Yes.
And he's the hands-on, high-performance speeds man. And they are getting absolutely everything out of Whisper at the moment.
Absolutely, and I think the teamwork is really finding its stride here as well. They did so well in the Blue Water point scores so far, both overall and online. So the teamwork together, they've been sailing together as a strong team over the last few years, and really been able to refine and train that. As you said, you know, perfect preparation prepares for perfect performance. This is, you know, case in point. I think with Whisper, they've really worked hard on their systems, found the right people that gel together and form a great team.
So Scallywag there on the right, the former Ragamuffin, as we mentioned, purchased from Sid Fisher in 2016. After the purchase, a new bowsprit, more modern rig, new sails and new rudders. And she's well travelled, that's for sure. David Witt has really been focused on promoting competitive sailing in Asia while building a long-lasting youth sailing legacy in Hong Kong in conjunction with the Hong Kong Sailing Federation.
So a bit of a lineup as we come out of Sydney Harbour. We're just sitting a little bit further out into the open ocean, and I can say there's a bit of swell out here. So there's going to be some great rides for these boats as they make their way out. Now, I'm going to have to correct myself there because I think that's Alive.
Yes, I think it is Alive.
Is actually in front of Scallywag. So, Alive, what can we say about them? They have won the Rolex Sydney Hobart. They know how to win races, and they actually have, they've got a great set of teamwork going on board there as well.
Yes, well, Duncan Hine, as we mentioned, so well performed, and you know, he's got his ace bowman there on board as well. The thing about Alive, when she won the Sydney Hobart overall, they had a great battle with Wild Oats 10 and the all-female crew, who had just a crew mishap around Tasman Island, which cost them the race probably. Alive was successful, the near sister ship, and became the first Tasmanian boat in nearly 40 years to win the Rolex Sydney Hobart, the Tazosal Cup, the overall prize. The previous winner was Screw Loose, the tiny Screw Loose in 1979, with the Bernie Butcher, Bob Cumming,
I think
at the helm.
Yeah, boats have changed so much since then, and it's great to have such a competitive boat in Alive down in Hobart. They do come up and do the majority of the races all the way up and down the east coast, not just here from Sydney. So great to have them up here again.
So Alive, the former Blackjack, bought by Phil Turner in 2014 on the recommendation of Duncan Hine. And Alive is actually named after Philip's two daughters, Alice and Evie. But I mentioned the bowman, Luke Watkins, the boat captain, also Tasmanian. He had the experience in that victory a couple of years ago of his fellow bowman being picked up by a wave and swept past him, literally on the foredeck, and he managed to grab him and save him before he lost him overboard. So an amazing piece of seamanship there by Luke Watkins. He actually caught Marco Carpinello in midair. But Alive finished second across the line in the Transpac from California to Hawaii, and second on handicappers. Scallywag now is starting to chase Hyde, and she'll relish these conditions. A little bit of a choppy swell just off the Sydney heads, but Scallywag now getting into the groove.
So Scallywag, as a 100-footer, you could have a number of people on board, but I noticed that there weren't up to 20 people. There were maybe around 15 or 16 on board. Now, I think that's crazy, but I guess it's efficient if you've got the right people on board and you don't need to have all that extra weight. They're wanting to basically use what they've got.
Well, just chatting to Brad Kellett, he said you don't sleep on the Super Maxis, you sleep when you get to Hobart. Now, these guys probably will just go full bore. If there's only 15 on board, there'll be no sleep. It's all hands on deck, and let's get there first. That's the challenge.
So we've got Whisper just out in front of the URM. Now these two had a great battle in the Bird Island race. Big reaching race, and it ended up being URM who crossed on line just ahead of the Whisper. And then the Willow coming into play just to win one of them. So what the boats are trying to do now is just maintain their air and send their way offshore. So we can see just out in front is still the Law Connect. In front of them was Alive, just behind them, sorry, was Alive. Then Scallywag. Then it's quite equal between these next three boats, the Whisper, the URM and the Willow. And then it is Sean Langman's Moneypenny just to the left of the screen, following in behind the Volvo 70 of Willow.
And that's interesting that we see Moneypenny there because your former crew at the Olympics in London 2012, Nina Curtis, is on board.
Nina's been doing so much sailing over the last little while. She's been on the Australian Sail GP team as the only female on the Australian team. So they have been around Europe and America racing, and then she's back home. The Sail GP will be in 2 weeks' time. But in the meantime, she's on board the Moneypenny and loves ocean racing as well. So she loves every bit of the sport.
They've got a lot of gun 18-footer sailors on board too.
They
on
do.
Moneypenny.
They do. Ed Powys is on board now. He's also Sail GP in previous seasons. Also sails with Sean Langman on the 18-foot skiff of Noak Sailing.
And this is No Limit. You mentioned Ed Powys. His dad, David, and David's wife, Jane, are watching this live stream in the south of England. And David is coming out to sail on Love and War in the Rolex Sydney Hobart. He won the race on Piccolo in 1976 from Lake Macquarie. And Peter Shipway is on Love and War. He's only standing in for David Powys.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
There you go.
And Peter will stand aside and do the commentary for Channel 7.
Fantastic.
And the Cruising Yacht Club.
No, there's many family connections in, across ocean racing and sailing in general as well. So it'd be good to have him out here. Wild Oats 10 just on screen. Now they were coming out of the pack in behind URM, Willow, and they're just ahead of the No Limit in behind there.
And the Olympic High Performance Director, Ian Murray, the legendary Australian sailor, of course, sailing master on Wild Oats 10. They've got a lot of the old... She's 18 years old, Wild Oats 10, a bit like one of those premium Robert Oakley wines. Just gets better and better.
So really tight battle here with some of our TP52s. We've got Zen on the left side of the screen, Gualo just to windward of them, and popping through is Ichiban. So 3 of our TP52s have made it outside their heads, all within a couple of boat lengths of each other. I wonder how tight it's going to be over the next little while.
Well, you could throw a blanket over them, really. Zen, representing the Middle Harbour Yacht Club and the Cruising Yacht Club for Gordon Catelby. Designed by the Spanish designers Boat & Partners. She's now 10 years old, but boy, is she competitive. And they're having their own private war, these TP52s. Skipper Tom Barker will be competing in his 14th or 15th Sydney Hobart, in fact. Zen won the Port Hacking race earlier this year and placed 5th in the Lion Island race, and was 6th in the November Bird Island race.
So there's an interesting battle going on here between Smuggler and Celestial, 2 more of our TP52s. They're just a little bit further to leeward than the 3 we were just speaking about before. But Sam Haynes, the owner and skipper of Celestial, he's also the CYCA treasurer. He actually used to previously own the Smuggler. So he bought Celestial last year, or this version of the Celestial, I should say, sorry, and is really looking forward to racing the gorgeous ship that she is. But he's looking down to leeward and can see his old boat in Smuggler.
Well, he's got the ace 18-footer sailor Jack McCartney on board, and he's been killing it on Tech 2. David Chapman also, very well respected and accomplished sailor. So Sam in Celestial, as you say, frowning at Smuggler at the moment, but they're having a great battle.
Just in behind them is actually Quest. Now another TP52 who's also won a Rolex Sydney Hobart before. So
Yeah.
Quest have a pretty tight-knit team over the last little while. They were very close to being in the lead of the Rolex Sydney Hobart just a few years ago.
Legendary Mike Green on board, 41 Sydney Hobarts to his name, and Quest Craig Neal from the Cruising Yacht Club of Australia. Just a very famous boat.
And the Denali, one of the newer TB52s to Australia, not a new boat in itself, but newer to Australia. And then just in behind them is actually the Maverick 49, so owned by Quentin Stewart. They're preparing for their second Rolex Sydney Hobart. Now they got 13th overall in the 2019 edition of the race, and it's one of 3 international boats in this fleet. So they are pretty good contenders for being an overall win in the Rolex Sydney Hobart. Now, Olympic gold medalist in the laser class in 2016, Tom Burton, is on board the Maverick 49. Now, he's done, I think, 1 ocean race before, and I think this might be his first overnighter. So keep your eyes out on the Maverick, and I'm sure that Tom's got some pretty good tactical knowledge that he's willing to impart.
Well, we've had such a great Olympic record, haven't we, in the laser with Tom and then Matt Wern in Tokyo. And, of course, we had the two-handed sailors, Disco Trooper, we'll be seeing them a little later in this telecast. But the light's holding up okay for us. It's nearly 7:30 at night. And there's MRV, Damien King, the Frères 61. And she's handling things nicely and just trying to bump and ease off some of those little waves that are coming through and getting nice little surges in these conditions. So Olivia's suggested they will go out offshore a little, but I don't think they'll go too far out. With this southerly prevailing, it's going a little west, predicted to go a little west, and then lighten once they get to the Hunter.
So we've got Khaleesi on screen here. Now Khaleesi is owned by Rob Aldous and skippered by Sandy Farquharson and Rob himself. It's a DK46 from 2005.
Yeah, they did well in the Flinders Island race, finishing 9th on ARC, and also in the Bird Island race they were 11th, so very consistent. And we've also spotted Pretty Woman here, Olivia.
So, yeah, owned by Richard Hudson. And so the team, this will be their team's 3rd attack on the Rolex Sydney Hobart from the Royal Prince Alfred Yacht Club up in Pittwater. They take part in so many offshore races, as the ARC.
Yeah. We just saw a toy box as well from the Middle Harbour Yacht Club, Ian Box. And all of these boats, these smaller boats now, with plenty, a good majority of the fleet still behind them. And looking across, I can see Kealoha there, the beautiful yawl over towards North Head. Hopefully we'll get a chance to have a look at her, but a very famous racing yacht in terms of world offshore sailing.
And the oldest boat in the Rolex Sydney
Yeah.
Hobart fleet this year.
Yes. Orrington Drumfire, another one of the larger maxi boats, 78-footer. Adrian Carlin on board, and also Stacey Jackson, who skippered Wild Oats 10 in that thrilling battle with Alive back in 2018.
So there's a flurry of boats coming
Yeah.
out of the harbour now, Gordon. I think they were all holding each other accountable and really trying to edge out every single part of their boat. Beautiful shot from the drone up here of spinnakers up. As we get to our more displacement boats, they are, you know, basically I think they might pole back and sail a lower angle compared to our maxis and super maxis as they make their way further out offshore, sailing higher angles for boat speed. So these guys can pull their spinnakers out and sail a little bit lower. More direct course to the mark. A little bit slower, but they'll be fighting each other all the way.
More of a beach route.
Yeah.
Yes. So the race record is just over 12 hours, held by Wild Oats 11, and we can safely tell you there will be no race record this year, with the southerly predicted to hit our coast at about midday tomorrow, and that's going to be a fresh southerly, so there's going to be a lot of windward work for the majority of the fleet coming back to Sydney Harbour once they've rounded Cabbage Tree Island.
So I spotted Popeye a little bit earlier. They're in the mix on your screen there, but owned and skippered by Craig Douglas. It's Beneteau first, 47.7. So in the Flinders Islet race, they got third on IRC in Division 2. So if there's a lot of races within the race here tonight, there's divisional races, there's all sorts of kind of bragging rights for when they get back to the bar and get one up on each other. So keep your eye on those divisional things on the tracker and the standings list at Blue Water Pointscore website.
And is this Kealoha here? Oh!
It is bumpy out here. They'll be having a ripping ride as they go downwind.
There's a steady drizzle prevailing at the moment too, and we've just gone past 7:30 local time, and most of the fleet are now outside the heads. Remember the two-handed races, there were 8 starters. They started 5 minutes behind the main fleet, so they'll be still making their way through the heads over the next 5 or 10 minutes. We'll see if we can pick up some of these smaller competitors for you. We're getting down to the 40-footers. Just a bit hard to pick up some of these sail numbers at the moment, but yes, because of the aperture in our cameras, we're able to make the conditions look quite light and bright, but I can assure you it's very dark out here. But the wonders of modern technology, as we see Wild Oats, the former Wild Oats, one of the many boats of Robert Oatley, and also Excess Moment.
So Wild Oats used to be Wild Rose, so it's owned by Brett Eagle. It's a FAR 43, so he bought it in 2020 and then reverted her to the original name of Wild Oats. So Excess Moment, who we saw just before, owned and skippered by Ray Hudson. They're from Pittwater. So they made their Sydney Hobart debut in 2017 and has been back in 2019, placing 59th overall in that really big, large fleet. So luxury 44-foot racer cruiser built from Denmark. Shane Kearns. The white base 6 is just about to enter the screen there on the left. Bit rocky and rolly for an S&S 34 out here, Gordon.
We just went past Enigma, Jason Bond, the Beneteau First 47.
So I've spotted our first of
Disco
the
Trooper.
two-handed.
Hey, how well are these guys going?
They are in the mix with the fully crewed. So the two-handed start was 5 minutes after the fully crewed start, and they are ripping through there. Well done to the Disco Trooper contender sailcloth.
Yes, Jules Hall and Jan Scholten. They're leading the two-handed division in the Audi Centre Sydney Blue Water Pointscore, and that is a stunning performance by these guys. And as we said, they're long-time laser sailors. They're very particular about their hydration levels, their food intake, their fluid intake, because they can't afford to fall below the equilibrium. And look at that shot now as we see the fleet making their way north towards Cabbage Tree Island off Port Stephens. And a lot of these boats will be finishing tomorrow night. Some of the smaller boats, depending on the conditions.
You can see Zara just on screen there. They don't have any spinnakers or bigger sails up at the moment. Owner skipper John Griffin of the Choi Lee 47 Ketch. So another traditional boat. So the elegant 47's designed to be that fast cruiser. And the construction is the result of over 90 years of yacht building knowledge and experience, pulling together the best materials for most rigid standards and longevity. So she's here for the long haul.
And they're having a relatively comfortable ride at the moment with sheets sprung. Some of the 200 entries who are chasing Disco Trooper will come into focus very shortly. As we mentioned, there are 8 two-handed entries: Crux, Disco Trooper, Contender Sailcloth, Local Hero here, KMA, Min River, Rum Rebellion, Salt Shaker and Speedwell. There's Speedwell. So we're picking up the two-handed entries now.
Speedwell is skippered by Campbell Jeeves and Wendy Tuck. Wendo being a famous ocean racer with Clipper Around the World race as well. One of the first females to actually win a Clipper race. So she loves being offshore. And I think this two-handed division gives her an extra challenge. You know, as you said, you've got to think about a lot more than, you know, sleeping and things like that. You've got to make sure you stay on top of your game. So Speedwell heading out with Local Hero there.
And very shortly we'll see Drumfire, Origin Drumfire, and see what this boat is. And here's Origin Drumfire, as we mentioned, Hall of Fame navigator, Hall of Fame sailor, Adrian Carlin on board. Now this is the way to do an ocean race, Olivia, on Origin Drumfire.
Absolutely. I remember thinking back to the Rolex Sydney Hobart in 2019, where they were watching Foxtel, having roast dinners, coffee, morning, afternoon, whatever you'd like. It is an absolute delight to be on board the Origin Drumfire. If you're ever lucky enough to have a look, you're one of the lucky few. I know we did a few years ago, we did a walkthrough and a boat tour of the Origin Drumfire. She's just beautiful.
It's a luxury interior. It's most magnificently maintained. It's all really timber, personally designed. A double cockpit, a double coach roof. She came to Australia in 2015. She won the 2011 Super Yacht Cup in Palma. So well-travelled, international competitor, and she really is a graceful luxury lady.
So Kai Mai is the boat next to it in the two-handed division, and we've actually got a father-son combination on board in Michael and Matt Bell. So Rob Aldous actually owns the boat, but Michael's setting up for his 12th Sydney Hobart. And Rob, actually the owner of the boat, purchased the boat in 2017 and raced it at Hobart that year.
It's a 46-footer, an Azuri 46-footer. So just two men sailing that boat in the double-handed division, and they're under spinnaker at the moment and just heading a little offshore before they'll jibe again and work their way up the coast without going too far off the coast.
It is a lot about energy conservation in the two-handed division, but also about your boat setup. You've got to really think about how you're going to put sails up and down efficiently with not using too much energy, but then also being able to get to places, your system set up, your ropes in the right place, everything brought back to the cockpit, not up at the mast. So it's really a big process to get your boat ready for a two-handed race.
So Olivia, just recapping on the way we started, take us through the events, because we saw a fantastic start by Law Connect, and also the smaller 60-footers were absolutely on fire.
Absolutely. They really kind of blew it out of the park. We saw Law Connect start further to leeward than majority of the fleet. They were then able to just sail their own race and punch out. But the Whisper came out of nowhere and actually started ahead of 100-footer Scallywag. So they were really competitive. Those three boats really competitive as they made their way down the harbour.
And then Alive
came out of the
left field.
Yeah, exactly. They really tricked us. They sailed I think a faster angle out of the heads past Watson's Bay and South Head. So they sailed a faster angle and actually overtook Scallywag, the 100-footer. So again, a 66-footer going through and challenging these 100-footers. So when we then made it out into open water, all our asymmetrical sailing boats, so your TP52s had a great battle all within each other.
And this is Rum Rebellion, another one of the two-handed entries, Shane Connolly. And yes, they're doing exceptionally well. One of the, towards the tail end of the fleet, understandably, just a two-handed entry, and Rum Rebellion, one of the 8 two-handed boats.
So they're sitting actually in equal second place with Salt Shaker, in the two-handed division in the Outer Centre Sydney Blue Water Pointscore. So equal second and 3 points off the win. So they're wanting to maybe accelerate a little bit out of here. So it looks like they're sailing a faster angle. I actually remember speaking to Shane Connolly a few years ago when Two-Handed was speaking about coming in to offshore sailing a little bit more in Sydney and Australia, and he just loves it. He loves being out there, he loves the challenge and really enjoying it.
And just while we're on Rum Rebellion, for the historians, the yacht's name and sail number reflect the infamous Rum Rebellion of 1808, Australia's first and only military coup. But her motto is New South Wales whalers don't hide under the bed. And they will be on the front foot.
So 65 boats started off Point Piper this evening for the Cabbage Tree Island Race. Now they're headed just north of Port Stephens before they round the island and head back to Sydney Harbour. So far, it's been a pretty exciting race.
Well, I think it's been an historic telecast too, the live stream. This is the first time the Cruising Yacht Club have televised live with commentary the start of the Cabbage Tree Island Race. It's a famous race on the calendar, isn't it? And there was no shortage of excitement on the harbour.
No, and it is the opening, the first race of the inaugural Income Asset Management Australian Maxi Championship, featuring those two divisions, the Maxi division, the 80 to 100 foot, and then the Mini Maxis, the 60 to 79 foot. So we have so much action over the coming weekend leading into the Solus Big Boat Challenge.
So I guess we'll be winding up our telecast. This is the scene. We're nearly up to 8 o'clock at night. and it is quite dark now. We can barely see South Head and the southern New South Wales coast, but that's the fleet. 65 yachts. They're all heading north towards Port Stephens and Cabbage Tree Island, and they'll be rounding, the Super Maxis will be rounding in the early hours of the morning. But you can keep up to date, as we said, with the fleet by following the live tracker on the official race website, bwps.cycaracing.com, bwps.cycaracing.com. We'll have more news, photos and videos across the CYC social media channels, and we'll also be live streaming, don't forget, the Solars Big Boat Challenge from midday next Tuesday, the 7th of December, on the CYCA's Facebook and YouTube channels. So be sure to tune in for the showdown on Sydney Harbour. So that winds up this live stream, this historic live stream of the 2021 Cabbage Tree Island Race. Our thanks to Director Michael Chittenden, and also Sail Media owner skipper James Bury, who's covered us beautifully with all of these yachts here today. So Gordon Bray here alongside our Olympic champ Olivia Price, signing off from Sydney Harbour.